In about 2 weeks, pretty much the whole NBA is going to be eligible to be traded. So for today's video, I came up with one trade idea for every single NBA team right now. Now, when I go over these, it might say that the trade failed because on December 15th, most of these guys become eligible to be traded. Besides Jonathan Kuminga, his happens in January since he signed so late in the offseason. And remember, when I'm talking about these trades, the team that I'm talking about specifically probably got the better end of the deal. It's really just the idea and concept of them adding somebody that can help them on defense, or maybe adding another ball handler or a shooter on the perimeter. And you guys can let me know down below, do you think your team is overpaying, or do you think this is a good deal for your team? And if maybe there's a deal that I didn't mention that you think is a really smart trade for your team, let me know down below. Drop a thumbs up if you guys do enjoy these videos, and maybe let me know if you guys want to see me do one where I react to your guys' trades about your favorite teams. So let's get into this. We're going to start off with a pretty tame one here. This one is a part of my favorite team, the New York Knicks. So far this year, Guerschon Yabusele has not been a good addition as a free agency pickup, so they're going to make a trade with the Brooklyn Nets that's going to send Guerschon Yabusele, Pacomi Dadier, and a second-round pick to Brooklyn in exchange for Hayward Highsmith and Tyrese Martin. Now, Highsmith has been out all year right now with a knee injury. The Nets basically got him for free in the offseason because Miami was trying to save some money against the luxury tax. So the Knicks can basically go from Guerschon to Hayward Highsmith in the rotation here, given that Highsmith is healthy to play at some point this year, just because he could provide you a better impact if he is healthy than Guerschon Yabusele. Last year for the Heat, Highsmith averaged 6.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and shot 38% from three in about 24 minutes a night. He was really effective when he was in that starting lineup for Miami with all that drama with Jimmy Butler. And Guerschon is basically giving them next to nothing so far this year. Like I said, he's been one of the worst free agency pickups, averaging 2 points, 2 rebounds, shooting 34% from the field, 28% from three. He unfortunately does not look like he's in game shape right now. So this would be an upgrade within the rotation. And the Knicks would also get Tyrese Martin in this deal as well, who's shooting 33% from three this year and is shooting around 50% on two. He's just another body they could throw out there. With the injury to OG Anunoby, the Nets get Pacomi Dadier, a first-round pick in the 2024 draft. Moving on from Martin and Highsmith can still open up more minutes long-term for the 5 rookies they're trying to play this year. And they get a second-round pick for somebody that is going to essentially leave in the offseason, most likely in Hayward Highsmith and Tyrese Martin, because the Knicks are not going to have a ton of flexibility this year at the deadline. I think they really are just hoping that somebody would take on Guerschon's contract because he's going to most likely make $5 million next year. It's a player option. The way he's playing, it would be really surprising if he didn't opt into that deal, but the Nets got cap space. Next one here comes for the Boston Celtics, and they're basically trading away Anthony Simons to the Memphis Grizzlies for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and one of the first-round picks that Memphis got back in the Desmond Bane trade. So this one is definitely, I think, a pipe dream for the Boston Celtics. I know that KCP is under a bad contract next year, slated to make around $21 million. It could give Boston some type of trade asset since it is an expiring deal. They can maybe stretch KCP's contract, pay him like $3 to $4 million a year over the next 5 or so years. So they're not going to take that big of a hit right now because we know Boston was trying to shed some money. They did that in the 2025 offseason. Drew gone, KP gone, Lou Kornet gone. And that was the appeal of Anthony Simons, somebody that could be a good 3-point shooter for you, but it was essentially an expiring contract. So you can leverage Simons' deal to save a little bit of money this year, but also get a future first-round pick that you can maybe use in a trade as well. KCP has not been the same player that he was in Denver in 2024. We know how much of a disaster it was for him in Orlando last year, shooting just 34% on threes, 8 points a night. The defense took a little bit of a dip as well. He has not been great this year for Memphis either, so it's essentially a negative contract. That's why Boston can get back a first-round pick. It's really tough to figure out a deal for Boston right now because they're not moving Jaylen Brown. They're not moving Peyton Pritchard. I doubt they move Derek White. They want to see what this team could be at full strength with Jason Tatum next year. I think they got a hit on Neemias Queta as a center. So maybe there is some type of like Anthony Simons for Yusuf Nurkic deal. You could save about $8 million towards the tax this year. You probably weren't going to re-sign Anthony Simons in the offseason. So it essentially comes down to it. Would you rather have $27 million completely off the books or a first rounder in 2030? This is what I came up with, Celtics fans. Let me know if you disagree or not. Philadelphia also can't make a ton of moves either because it's guys that are getting paid basically the max money in Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey, and 2 of those 3 are basically untradeable right now and a bunch of cheaper rookie contracts. So the 76ers are going to get a better backup big. It's going to be Andre Drummond and 2 second rounders for Marvin Bagley, a name who may appear more than once in this video, because Andre Drummond is not what he used to be. He's just not been a good rotational big man for the 76ers. I know he's been a good rebounder for this team in real life and is somehow knocking down 43% of his threes, but Philadelphia also wants to save money against the luxury tax. They'd save about $2.8 million with this trade when Marvin Bagley would be eligible to be traded in December. Washington would essentially take on Andre Drummond's expiring contract, can be some type of veteran for Alex Sarr, but they pick up some second round draft capital in this deal as well. I just don't think Philadelphia is going to trade away a Kelly Oubre this year. They lack perimeter wings. Maybe there's going to be a Quentin Grimes trade at one point as well, but Philadelphia is kind of in the middle of the Eastern Conference at the moment. They've been about a league average offensive team, not a great defensive team. It's just a shame that 70% of their cap space is unreliable every single night. Embiid misses a ton of time. Paul George has missed time this year. And you also have to worry about load management with those guys as well. They are running Tyrese Maxey kind of into the ground right now because Maxey is averaging a league high 40 minutes per game. 40 minutes per game. It is a long season. I don't want to see Maxey get hurt because of this. Edgecombe is already dealing with an injury right now. It's just Philadelphia doesn't have a lot to work with. So this is like an under the radar move. And Marvin Bagley is a solid offensive big man who is averaging around 7.5 points, 4.5 rebounds this year for the Washington Wizards. He's good around the rim. And when Embiid is out, he's a little bit more talented offensively than Drummond, in my opinion, or definitely a Dembona. For the Brooklyn Nets, it's trying to see how desperate the LA Clippers are. This one would send John Collins, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Brook Lopez, and a 2031 unprotected pick swap to Brooklyn for Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas. Now, I have no idea what the Clippers are going to do this year. They are the most disappointing team in the NBA, in my opinion, with their expectations going into the year, and they are 5-15 at the moment. They can't play a lick of defense. Kawhi Leonard has missed time this year, and they're relying so much on James Harden this late into his career. So Brooklyn gets out of basically the $40 million from Michael Porter Jr. next year, given how good he's been playing this year. Cam Thomas most likely wasn't going to be on this team next year anyways, and you get a ton of expiring money. John Collins is $26 million expiring contract. Bogdan Bogdanovic is $16 million expiring contract since it's a team option in the offseason. Who knows if Brook Lopez is going to retire or not, and you get a juicy 2031 unprotected pick swap from the Clippers. Maybe they would need another first rounder in this trade. Maybe they would need like Yannick Conan-Niederhauser, the Clippers' most recent first round pick. I just don't think Cam Thomas has much trade value this year since he can leave Brooklyn in the offseason, and they really weren't committed to paying him last offseason anyway. It's just really figuring out what Michael Porter Jr. would go for, and Brooklyn could maybe sell high on MPJ right now. They did that with Dennis Schroeder. They did that with Dorian Finney-Smith. You can make an argument they did that with Cam Johnson as well. It's just something Sean Marks has done since they had to trade away Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The Toronto Raptors also make a big splash here. The Raptors are currently the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference when I'm recording this. They're 14-6. So they're going to go out and save James Harden and Chris Paul from the LA Clippers. RJ Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, and Grady Dick are going to go to the LA Clippers. This would be eligible on December 15th when Harden and CP3 can get traded. And the main reason why you're making this trade is getting James Harden. Chris Paul is here just to save him from a dysfunctional team right now in Los Angeles. I don't know if Chris Paul would ever even want to go to Toronto, but we know that he's retiring at the end of the year, so we're just trying to get him on a team that can actually play playoff basketball. The Raptors were trying to move RJ Barrett all offseason long. Ochai Agbaji could be a free agent, and Grady Dick has taken somewhat of a step back this year, now that they've also added Jacoby Walter into the fold, Jamal Shed, and Colin Murray-Boyles since they drafted Grady back in 2023. And I think just getting another shot creator around Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram can really maximize this Toronto Raptors offense, which is currently 9th in the NBA in terms of offensive rating. There's maybe a different version of this trade where you keep RJ Barrett and you include Emmanuel Quickley, because like I said, it just really depends on what Los Angeles wants to do at the deadline. Do they want to buy? Do they want to sell? Do they just want to let this team run its course? They don't own their first round pick this year. And Harden is having maybe the best offensive scoring season since his Houston Rockets days. He's averaging 27.5 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists a night, 43% from the field, 37% from 3, and 91% from the free throw line. O'Shea and Grady's minutes have kind of been all over the place this year, so you're essentially going from RJ Barrett to James Harden, who's still a very good three-point shooter right now, and this would be a slight win-now move for Toronto, but not really mortgaging the future. You're getting one of the best scoring guards in the league right now, who is 36, but you don't have to give up a single first-round pick. You don't have to give up like Colin Murray-Boyles or anybody like that, because it really depends how aggressive Toronto wants to be, and it also depends on what the Clippers are going to end up doing. Speaking of a team that needs some offensive help, the Milwaukee Bucks. When Giannis was recently out, the Bucks could not win a single game. The offense did not look like it could flow without Giannis Antetokounmpo on the court. So they're going to call up the Sacramento Kings, who are 5-15 and are probably going to be sellers at the deadline. Zach LaVine going to Milwaukee, Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, and Jericho Sims going to Sacramento. For Milwaukee here, yes, you're trading Kyle Kuzma, who's had some nice moments this year, but you're getting so much of a better secondary shot creator next to Giannis Antetokounmpo in Zach LaVine, in my opinion. 21 points this year, 3 rebounds, 49% from the field, 38% from 3, and 86% from the free throw line. Zach LaVine would get so many good looks playing in Milwaukee with so much of the opposing team's defense attention on Giannis Antetokounmpo and the gravity he could provide. And I think this team could really be scary with Zach LaVine shooting 38% from 3, Ryan Rollins out there, and AJ Green, and Miles Turner, who could space the floor all around Giannis. So you're basically going from Kuzma to LaVine as a secondary shot creator. Bobby Portis has been here for a while, but you got to make the money work. You're obviously not trading away Miles Turner, and Sacramento would also probably want some front court depth in a return for Zach LaVine, who could technically be a free agent at the end of the year. He's got about a $48 million player option, and Jericho Sims, another big man depth piece, ends up going to the Kings. I'm intrigued about Rollins, Green, LaVine, Turner, and Giannis as a 5-sum going into the playoffs. And I think if you're going to try to convince Giannis to stay, if you can get somebody as talented of a scorer as Zach LaVine, who you could probably re-sign on a lesser AAV in the offseason, but more guaranteed money over a 4-year span, I would go do it, especially if you don't have to give up any draft capital. Another great team in the Eastern Conference this year, the Detroit Pistons. And yeah, this is going to be a big splash for them. They're going out and trading for Lauri Markkanen, which is going to include Tobias Harris, Karis LeVert, Jaden Ivey, and 3 first-round picks this year, which is not going to be a very valuable first if Detroit keeps this up. 2028 and 2030. Now, I could totally see the reasoning for Detroit not wanting to make a big splash. Like, they're 16-4 this year. Why fix what's not broken? But in my opinion, this is such an upgrade for a team that's really not giving up that many important pieces in this deal. Yes, you're giving up 3 first-round picks, but Lauri Markkanen is under contract until 2030. So it's not like you're going to lose this asset for nothing. Jaden Ivey could be a free agent at the end of the year. I highly doubted that they were going to pay both Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. And from what we've seen this year, you're definitely going to pay Duren over Ivey. Ivey has struggled a little bit to get kind of back into the swing of things. I mean, he suffered a gruesome injury last year, kind of re-aggravated an injury before the year started, so he's only played 5 games this year. But I do think what he was pre-draft, him going 5th overall, and what he did in the first half last year could headline this deal. Karis LeVert, you're not going to lose any sleep over losing. Tobias Harris is definitely a great locker room guy, and this is the big blow. But you're going out and trading for Lauri Markkanen, who is averaging about 28.5 points this year for the Utah Jazz, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 47% from the field, 36% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line. A Jazz fan may look at this and say, hell no, if we're not getting back a Duren, a Stewart, a Holland, a Thompson, why would we do this deal? And that's definitely a fair argument. Like I said, whenever I bring these deals up for the specific team, in this case it's Detroit, they're going to get the better end of the deal. And I definitely think if Detroit can make this deal with sending away like Ivy, 3 first-round picks, maybe it's Dennis Jenkins in this deal for Markkanen, while keeping Duren, Stewart, Holland, Thompson around Cade going forward, you do this deal. They're essentially keeping everybody, and you can have Cade Cunningham at the 1, maybe it's Duncan Robinson at the 2 for some 3-point shooting, Asar Thompson, Lauri Markkanen, and Jalen Duren, or it's Cade, Thompson, Stewart, Markkanen, and Jalen Duren. That's a team that could win the Eastern Conference this year. For the Indiana Pacers, I don't really know what direction they're going to head into the deadline. Are they going to trade like an Obi Toppin, a TJ McConnell, a Jarris Walker, or a Benedict Mathurin, who we're going to bring up here? Benedict Mathurin going to the New Orleans Pelicans for Saddiq Bey and a top 10 protected pick in 2029. I think Benedict Mathurin is a fascinating asset right now for the Indiana Pacers because they clearly didn't really want to pay him in the offseason. We're going to get Tyrese Halliburton next year for them. They're probably going to draft somebody in the top 5, which is going to be making a decent amount of money. So I don't know if they want to commit over $20 million to Benedict Mathurin long term, who is averaging 22 points this year, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, shooting about 45% from the field and 39% from 3 in 9 games. And we know that the Pelicans do not own their first round pick this year. So I expect them to make some type of aggressive move here at the deadline. They can go out and get Benedict Mathurin, who's a little bit younger than Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey is 26, Mathurin is 23, but Saddiq Bey has been a good 3-point shooter this season, and they would give up a 2029 first round pick, which is definitely risky. But Benedict Mathurin, like I said, is 23 years old. You could re-sign him going forward. I have no idea if Zion Williamson is going to be on this team after the deadline, after this year, so you're going to need some scoring to come from somewhere, and you can now save that money that you move on from Zion, give it to Benedict Mathurin, or at least some of it, who for the most part in his career has been available. He did suffer an injury late in the 2024 season, and he did get banged up this year as well, but he's somebody that is super aggressive, and that's what New Orleans needs at the moment. And talent-wise, going from Bay to Mathurin is a massive upgrade. It's just, do they want to part ways with that first-round pick? And I think for Indiana, if you're not going to pay Mathurin in the offseason, getting a Pelicans draft pick is always a smart idea. Next up here for the Cleveland Cavaliers, another tough team to come up with some trade ideas. So they're essentially going from Larry Nance Jr., who's been kind of a disappointment. I really like that pickup in the offseason, but he does not look like he's fitting well in Cleveland, and 2 second-rounders for Marvin Bagley. Because for the Cavs, it's almost impossible to come up with a trade idea for them because they are in the second apron. They're paying Garland, Allen, Mobley, Mitchell, Strus, DeAndre Hunter, and Sam Merrill a lot of money as well. A lot of those guys have actually performed semi-well individually. It's just that the Cavs have had some injuries this year. Lonzo Ball isn't really knocking down any of his shots, and I do think they can look for an upgrade as a big man over Larry Nance Jr. if they don't want to rely too much on Naquan Tomlin over the course of the year. So they go out and get Marvin Bagley. All the right things that I said about him when I was talking about Philadelphia can kind of move over here to Cleveland. A good offensive big man around the rim, can set good screens, a nice elbow jump shooter, and this could play off nicely with Darius Garland, who's a phenomenal playmaker, and Donovan Mitchell, and could give Cleveland about 8 to 12 better minutes a night than what Larry Nance Jr. has provided them at some points this year. For the Chicago Bulls, it's just seeing how desperate the Golden State Warriors can be. It's going to be a 3-for-3 swap. They're essentially sending out Nikola Vucevic, Ayo Dosunmu, and Javon Carter, 3 expiring contracts to Golden State for Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, and Brandon Podziemski. I mean, Vucevic could be a nice offensive weapon for the Golden State Warriors. I don't know if Chicago would have to throw any draft capital in this trade as well, given Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski's upside long term. Vuce has been a clutch player this year at the start, not too much as of late, but is still shooting 49% from the field this year and 40% from 3, and could be a solid big man in the front court when Draymond Green is helping him out defensively. Ayo Dosunmu is a free agent at the end of the year, and you may say that the Warriors wouldn't do this trade unless it's Kobe White on the table. Just wait until I get to Golden State and we'll talk about that. But Ayo's been really good this year for Chicago, shooting 48% from 3, 54% from the field, averaging 15 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 3 assists, and I think could be an upgrade over Brandon Podziemski. You get off that Buddy Hield long-term money as well, and then maybe you could just re-sign Dosunmu in the offseason. Gives you a little bit more cap flexibility, getting back your mid-level exception in the 2026 offseason. And I think for Chicago, this makes a ton of sense to get Jonathan Kuminga as a potential long-term asset next to Matas Buzelis, who I think has been a beneficiary of Josh Giddey's playmaking into Buzelis' development. That could be the same thing with Jonathan Kuminga going forward. Getting Brandon Podziemski, who could be a nice combo guard off of Josh Giddey as well, I think could be really entertaining and could fit under Billy Donovan in this run and gun system. And yeah, you're gonna have to take back some bad Buddy Hield money, but you're definitely okay with that if you're gonna get Kuminga and Podziemski for 3 expiring contracts. Let's go over here to the Northwest Division. We all know that the Minnesota Timberwolves need a point guard. I don't think they're landing a Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, Ja Morant this year, so I'm gonna have them get Dennis Schroeder for the Sacramento Kings in exchange for Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham. And this is basically just realizing that Rob Dillingham is a sunk cost right now for the Minnesota Timberwolves. You gave up a future first rounder to go up and get him, but he has not been a good point guard objectively, and you need to maximize this window with Anthony Edwards on his second contract before he gets a supermax, Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert still playing well into their 30s, and Dillingham is shooting 37% from the field and 31% from 3. Mike Conley has been a good 3-point shooter this year, but this would be a good upgrade in my opinion, getting Dennis Schroeder over those two, who's also under contract next year. Now, Schroeder hasn't been super efficient in Sacramento, but I believe it would work in Minnesota playing off of Anthony Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo, and Julius Randle. I think can maximize Schroeder because it's not been a great situation for him in Sacramento right now. They did bench him this year, but he's a better defender than Mike Conley at his age. He's a way better offensive player than Rob Dillingham, and his third year of his contract is not a guarantee, so it's essentially $14 million next year. Minnesota can move that in the offseason, or if he plays well for them, you have a pretty cheap point guard option going into the 2027 season. I would love to see Ja Morant or LaMelo Ball, one of those guys in Minnesota. I just don't think it's happening because I doubt they trade away Naz Reid and definitely not Jaden McDaniels. For the Portland Trailblazers, they also need some shooting. They've been one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the NBA this year. So they're calling the New Orleans Pelicans. They're seeing if they can get Sadiq Bey and Jordan Hawkins for Matisse Thybulle and 4 second-rounders. I believe that the Jordan Hawkins era in New Orleans is going to be coming to an end very soon. He's shooting 33% from the field this year, 29% from 3, and maybe just needs a change of scenery, given that he was a solid 3-point shooter in his rookie year, about 36% from 3. And yes, Sadiq Bey has also been a good 3-point shooter this year. I mentioned that before in that Pacers-Pelicans trade, and you're basically giving the Pelicans an expiring contract in Matisse Thybulle for $11.5 million a year. They also can't play great defense. At least Thybulle can give you some minutes over there with all the injuries that usually happen in New Orleans, and they recoup some draft capital here 4 second rounders for Hawkins, who was maybe going to get non-tendered in the offseason, and Saddiq Bey, who I think it's inevitable that he gets moved. What moves do the OKC Thunder need to do? I don't think I need to bring up a trade here. They did make a trade at the deadline last year, basically getting a free second rounder for Daniel Tice from the Pelicans because their cheap ownership wanted to deduct the tax. The Thunder didn't have to worry about that, so they got a free second rounder. This time around, they're kind of doing the same thing in a way, but they're giving a high upside guy in Ousmane Dieng, who is a restricted free agent at the end of the year. I doubt that he's back in OKC. He's going to go to Brooklyn, where he at least has a chance to show something for Brooklyn in the second half of the year. The Thunder get Hayward Highsmith, an expiring contract, actually making less this year than Dieng, so you save a little bit of money against the tax, and you get a second round pick out of it as well. If you're not going to bring back Dieng in the offseason, you might as well get a 2028 second rounder that I have in this deal. Maybe Highsmith is healthy for you at one point this year. I mean, OKC did have some injuries last year. They've had plenty of injuries this year where we've seen Brooks Barnhizer, Braden Carlson, and Chris Youngblood out there. So getting a little bit more depth later in the year when they're going to be playing some back-to-backs and they want to keep their guys healthy for the playoffs. If Highsmith is healthy, he could be a good wing option for them, and I think could fit seamlessly for them on the defensive end of the court. And you get a second rounder for somebody you may not bring back in the offseason. But like I said, OKC doesn't need to do anything. For Denver, it's trying to add a good backup point guard to this team. It's been a little bit of like Bruce Brown as a backup point guard this year, but he's been pretty inefficient for the most part, shooting under 40% from the field and 30% from three. Julian Strawther is basically out of the rotation right now, and Zeke Naji is a complete negative asset in the front court. So this would be kind of a pipe dream if the Indiana Pacers would agree to this deal. It's basically TJ McConnell going to Denver for Zeke Naji, Julian Strawther, and a unprotected pick swap in 2031. Now for Indiana, you take a flyer on Julian Strawther, who's also under a cheap contract deal next year, who showed something in the playoffs against the OKC Thunder in that round 2 series. You do have to take on the Zeke Naji money. I don't know if they want to do that, but I think that 2031 unprotected pick swap could be a little bit intriguing for Indiana as well. I mean, yeah, like I said, it's a little bit of a pipe dream for Denver to land somebody like TJ McConnell, who showed he could be effective against the OKC Thunder in the NBA Finals. He's averaging about 10 points this year, 4.5 assists, and shooting 51% from the field. I don't think Indiana ends up moving McConnell, but if the Nuggets can get somebody of McConnell's value as a backup point guard to Jamal Murray, I think that's what their main priority should be at the deadline. For the Utah Jazz, I kind of struggled with figuring out what they would do. Yes, they could move Lauri Markkanen, but I don't think I would move him unless you're getting a really good haul in return. And I doubt they end up moving somebody like a Cody Williams or a Taylor Hendricks. Maybe they do, but in this deal, I have them basically getting Bogdan Bogdanovic's expiring contract and 2 second rounders for Kyle Anderson. Anderson could be somewhat of a valuable piece for the LA Clippers in their front court. He's only played 5 games for the Utah Jazz this year, averaging around 7.5 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds. I think would be a better player for this team than like Brook Lopez or Nick Batum, and Derek Jones Jr. is currently hurt. Bogdan Bogdanovic does have a $16 million team option next year, but he's kind of been a negative player for the Clippers on defense this year. He's only shooting 34% from 3. So the Jazz are going to basically cut him at the end of the year, but they get 2 second round picks because they lack second round draft capital. They gave up a second rounder and Colin Sexton for Yusuf Nurkic in the offseason. They're a rebuilding team that has way less second round draft capital than a rebuilding team should, so they can get some of that here in this deal with the Clippers, who get, I think, an upgrade for a bench player going from Bogey to Kyle Anderson. And let's go to the Clippers here, and they're going to take a chance on Zion Williamson. I think the Clippers might be the most desperate team this year at the deadline, not really owning a direct path to their first round pick till the 2030s. They have an aging core. Let's go out and take a swing for Zion Williamson from New Orleans, John Collins expiring contract, Derek Jones Jr., a good role player, Nick Batum, and an unprotected 2031 first round pick. Yeah, for Zion Williamson, which when you look at this on the surface level, at one point, this would be just 40 cents on the dollar, 30 cents on the dollar, maybe 15 cents on the dollar for what Zion Williamson can provide you. But Zion this year does look like he's in the best shape of his life, but he's also been maybe the least effective that he has been in his career since he was drafted back in 2019. He's averaging 22.1 points, which would be a career low, 51% from the field, which would be a career low, 52% on twos, you guessed it, a career low, 5.5 rebounds. The playmaking is taking a step back this year, and maybe him losing a little bit of weight made him lose a little bit of strength down low on both ends of the court, but the Clippers can try to buy low here. I think going from Collins to Zion would be an improvement. You would have some floor spacing issues with Zion and Zubats out there at the same time, but they need a third shot creator around Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. It would be kind of hilarious to have Zion and Kawhi on the same team, two guys that struggle to stay healthy, but at least Zion is 25 years old. You can cut him at one point throughout this contract as well. So maybe this is a little bit of an overpay, like Derrick Jones Jr. and an unprotected 2032 first round pick is a lot. But yeah, I'm just really curious to see how desperate the Clippers really are going to be. For the LA Lakers, this is them going out and getting another solid rim protector and big to pair up with DeAndre Ayton. They're basically trading away Jared Vanderbilt. They're okay with that. Maxi Kleber and Dalton Connect, all okay with that, and a top 3 first round pick in 2031. And Nick Claxton is under not the worst contract in the world either. I assume that the LA Lakers are going to pay Austin Reeves a lot of money in the offseason, so I don't think they're really ever going to have a max slot available this upcoming summer, 2027 or 2028. Nick Claxton is owed $25 million this year, but it descends over the next 2 years, $23 million in 2027 and $20.9 million in 2028. He's averaging around 13 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists in Brooklyn. I think this could just be like the DeAndre Ayton effect 2.0. He could look motivated. He could look rejuvenated, going from a losing environment in Brooklyn to a winning environment in LA. And DeAndre Ayton has been a positive offensive center for the Lakers this year. I do think that Claxton is a little bit better defensively. And what if DeAndre Ayton goes down with an injury at one point this year, which can be prevalent for big men throughout their careers, as Ayton has only played over 70 games once, and that was in his rookie year when he was 20 years old. So you go out and get some insurance in Nick Claxton, who's not under a bad contract. You're not going to lose any sleep trading away Vanderbilt, Kleber, or Dalton Connect. It's really just that first round pick. Like, maybe some Lakers fans are fine with Jackson Hayes being the backup center, but I do think this is a nice upgrade for them. For the Golden State Warriors, it's going back to that Chicago Bulls. Well, maybe they make a trade for somebody like Anthony Davis or Domantas Sabonis. This deal is going to land them Nikola Vucevic and Kobe White for Kuminga, Buddy Hield, Brandon Bojemski, and a lottery protected first round pick. I do think Kobe White would go for a little bit more than somebody like Ayo Dosunmu just based off age and production in the past. You go from basically Kuminga, Bojemski, and Hield to Vucevic and Kobe White, who can help you space the floor. I think Kobe White could really be a great offensive addition when Steph Curry is not on the court. White has shown that he can at least handle a #1 workload. I'm not saying that he can lead a team to a playoff appearance or an NBA Finals, but if Steph misses a game or two, I think Kobe White could be a good co-star with Jimmy Butler over somebody like Jonathan Kuminga and definitely Brandon Bojemski. And Kobe White is 25 years old. You can lock him up in the offseason going forward. He will be here after Steph Curry retires. You get Nikola Vucevic, who can help you this year, and you can kind of say that, you know what, we're getting off of Kuminga and Buddy Hield's $30 million in the offseason. We'll take Vucevic's $21 million contract, because this deal could essentially save money for the Warriors long term, depending on the Kobe White extension. For the Sacramento Kings, they could make so many different moves, right? We could trade away Sabonis. We could trade away Levine. I have no idea who would trade for DeMar DeRozan. This one is a pretty simple one. Calling up the Golden State Warriors again. Something that was rumored in the offseason. Malik Monk and Keon Ellis for Jonathan Kuminga. Now, this trade can't happen until January when Kuminga is eligible to be traded, but Kuminga is not looking as good as he did in preseason or the start of the year. We know that kind of talks with him and the Warriors soured throughout the offseason. He signs essentially a one-year deal with an under-the-table agreement that he's going to get traded. He's down in scoring this year. The efficiency is slightly up, though, from last year as well, but kind of still ways away removed from his breakout year in 2024. I think we can maybe maximize his potential in Sacramento, playing off of Keegan Murray and Domantas Sabonis going forward, and gives the Kings a little bit more continuity and another nice young asset at 23 years old. Maybe Sacramento would have to kick in a first-round pick or anything like that, but also Sacramento was trying to move Malik Monk in the offseason. But yeah, Malik Monk is a secondary shot creator in a way next to Steph Curry, at least in that backcourt, can at least provide you some good three-point shooting, and I think a little bit better ball handling than somebody like Brandon Bojemski. And Monk is in a really tough spot right now with all the mouths to feed and all those guards in Sacramento. And the Warriors also take a flyer on Keon Ellis, who is one of the best point of attack guard defenders in the NBA, who I think is just being wasted in Sacramento. So I think this trade might be a win-win. For the Phoenix Suns too, like, what do they want to do? They don't own their first round pick this year, so I don't see them selling high on like a Grayson Allen or a Royce O'Neal. So I have them trading away Nick Richards and a second rounder for Day'Ron Sharpe. Something Jordan Ott and the Suns have been preaching this year is just athleticism, rebounding, and defense. And Nick Richards has kind of been in and out of the Suns rotation this year. They definitely like Mark Williams as like the guy there. They played Oso Ighodaro a ton. So I think you can get Day'Ron Sharpe, who's also under contract next year, unlike Nick Richards. So Brooklyn could shed a little bit of long-term money. They pick up a second rounder here as Phoenix picks up a better athlete, a better passer, a better rebounder than Nick Richards, Day'Ron Sharpe is 24 years old, and like I said, is also under contract next year as well. He's slated to make $6.2 million on a team option as the Suns trying to make their playoff push. Let's go to the Southeast Division here, and this one is for the Charlotte Hornets. We have a rare in-division trade, although I did just talk about one with the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors. Either way, this one is going to send Corey Kispert to the Charlotte Hornets, a team that desperately needs three-point shooting. For Pat Connaughton, an expiring contract, so Washington gets out of that long-term money with Corey Kispert and a solid veteran in the locker room, and then 3 second-rounders in this deal as well. I always wanted to see Corey Kispert in a playoff series, and we really haven't seen that in his career. There are so many mouths to feed in Washington with Trey Johnson, Keyshawn George. Right now, Cam Whitmore and CJ McCollum on the perimeter. You assume an incoming top 5 pick, Alex Sarr as well. Kispert could be a nice role player playing off of LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Con Knipple in Charlotte because Josh Green hasn't played this year. Grant Williams hasn't played this year. They have those injury concerns with LaMelo and Brandon Miller. So Corey Kispert could help them on the perimeter and is somebody that has been pretty much available for most of his career. Only one season where he played less than 74 games, and that was last year for basically a tanking Wizards team. And the Wizards pick up some nice second-round draft capital and some long-term salary relief. Another team that could use some three-point shooting, the Orlando Magic. So I talked about it before, how I just want to see James Harden and Chris Paul in the playoffs this year, or at least trying to do something before they end up retiring. More so Harden than Chris Paul, because Chris Paul is just there as a vibes guy. But the Orlando Magic are going out and trading for Klay Thompson from the Dallas Mavericks, who has been playing a little bit better as of late. Klay Thompson, Dante Exum, and Brandon Williams going to Orlando, with Jonathan Isaac, who does not have a full guaranteed contract next year, going to Dallas with Tyus Jones, who's been bad this year for the Orlando Magic, but is at least a point guard that I think could be better than Brandon Williams and D'Lo for Dallas. And Dallas also doesn't own that much second-round draft capital going forward, so they pick up a second-rounder here. And Klay Thompson is up to about 34.5% on threes this year. He just had a really nice game against the LA Clippers where he had 23 points. He had a good game recently against the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think as we get into the playoffs, it would benefit Orlando having just another veteran shooter out there in Klay Thompson. He's owed a little bit of money next year as well, but so is Jonathan Isaac. And I just want to see Klay Thompson in a playoff series if possible, and I don't think that's going to happen this year in Dallas. For the Atlanta Hawks, this is a big one. I did want to include one Anthony Davis trade here. This one is going to send Anthony Davis to the Atlanta Hawks, them going all in this year for Kristaps Porzingis, who has been up and down this year with the Atlanta Hawks, Luke Kennard, an expiring contract like Kristaps Porzingis, Vic Krejci, and a 2028 first-round pick swap that was included in that DeAndre Hunter trade to Atlanta at the 2025 deadline. So yeah, Atlanta is making out nicely here, in my opinion, if Anthony Davis can stay healthy. Kristaps has still been a solid scorer this year, but I think for the defensive impact, you do prefer Anthony Davis a little bit more. AD is owed a decent amount of money going forward, and this would be a commitment to this core, especially if you're re-signing Trae Young in the offseason, because this team will get expensive. But I think this can really maximize your window this year with Trae Young. Imagine a lineup of Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jalen Johnson, and Anthony Davis, with Zachary Reese-Shea and Onyeka Okongwu, who's been playing well this year, coming off the bench. I think that can really give Atlanta a team that can compete for a title this year, but it really comes down to Anthony Davis's health. For Dallas, it is kind of ironic that you're getting Kristaps Porzingis back on your team, a guy that you traded away at the 2022 deadline. This could kind of get roped into a 3-team deal if somebody wanted KP. I'm sure we'd have somewhat of a market. Luke Kennard could be another shooter, ball handler for you in your backcourt. You take a flyer on Vic Krejci, who's shown that he could be a good three-point shooter this year, and a team also doesn't own that much draft capital for your rebuild around Cooper Flagg. You get a mid-tier first in this deal. It's just really hard to figure out what Anthony Davis's trade value is. For the Washington Wizards, they're going to go out and take on some bad money a little bit in Caleb Martin, D'Angelo Russell, but are going to get a first-round pick out of it, and Dallas is getting Corey Kispert and Marvin Bagley. Now, I'm not sure if a first-rounder would have to be in this deal. I think that's also a pipe dream for the Washington Wizards. Now, this isn't really the greatest first-round pick in the world. It's a swap worst. So you assume if Houston or Dallas is going to be good in 2029, which I expect maybe both or at least one of those teams is going to be good by then, this pick isn't going to have that much value, but Washington can use their cap space to take on Caleb Martin's now bad contract, D'Angelo Russell's potential opt-in, and Dallas gets some long-term shooting around Cooper Flagg in Corey Kispert, who's way younger than Klay Thompson. And I had to throw another person in this trade to make the money work. Marvin Bagley is probably the most intriguing minimum contract on Washington. And I think this is the type of trade Washington should make. They did it last year with acquiring Marcus Smart from Memphis, and they were able to get Will Riley out of it. And for the Miami Heat here, they're going to be basically getting an out on the Nikola Jovic extension. He's not been living up to the extension this year, although it doesn't kick in till the 2027 season. So this would technically be a poison pill trade, which means the Clippers Clippers have to technically absorb what the new contract extension is going to be, around $15 million. And the Clippers have just basically no young pieces on their roster right now. So the Heat are getting an out with this deal. Bogdan Bogdanovic's expiring contract, and they take a flyer on Yannick Niederhauser, a first-round pick from the Clippers this year, behind Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware. Get him under that SPO system. The Clippers take a flyer on a 22-year-old. I think like Simone Fontecchio should be back in the Heat rotation over Nikola Jovic, and the Heat could have more financial flexibility going forward, maybe allocating that to a Tyler Hero extension or making some type of trade in the offseason, because it's really iffy if they're even able to move the Terry Rozier contract. I don't think they are, so if they're trying to shed out some money, Nikola Jovic's poison pill is probably the way to go. And the last division, the Southwest Division, we're going to talk about Malik Monk and Keon Ellis going to the Houston Rockets for Fred VanVleet and the Rockets 2028 first rounder. So this one is really up in the air because Fred VanVleet is giving the Rockets zero production this year. He tore his ACL. He's out for the year. Now, Fred VanVleet has a $25 million player option for next year. Kevin Durant is going to be back next year. Most of this core will be. So maybe they're like, you know what? It's not the end of the world if we don't win it all this year. We can go back next year. But I'm just worried, man. Like, the Rockets are great this year. How many more years of Kevin Durant at this level are you going to get? Maybe you're going to get him next year as well. But imagine getting Malik Monk and Keon Ellis into the fold this year, and you're not trading away a future Suns first rounder or a future Nets first rounder. It's your first rounder in 2028, and you're most likely going to be good. Now, Fred VanVleet has a no trade clause, so this can get completely thrown out of the window. He's a good locker room guy as well. But I think if you're able to add somebody like Malik Monk and Keon Ellis for zero production this year, which is included in this trade, the Rockets can get so much better and try to just maximize their team's opportunity in beating a Denver and OKC in the playoffs. I have another Anthony Davis trade here. This is just for Dallas. If Matt Ishbia says, you know what? I want to be back in the spotlight. Jalen Green, Grayson Allen, and 2 second-round picks to Dallas for Anthony Davis. Now, I'd love to know, like, what is more in line with Anthony Davis's trade return value? Do you think it's like Kristaps Porzingis, Vic Krejci, Luke Kennard, and a first rounder? Or do you think it could look something like this, where it's Jalen Green, who's a nice young two guard in this league, Grayson Allen, and 2 second rounders? Now, if this trade was proposed to the Suns in the offseason, I'm sure they would have done it. Now, this year, Anthony Davis dealing with some injuries, Jalen Green's been hurt, Grayson Allen has been returning to his elite shooting form. There's a chance Phoenix may say no to this, but I think for Dallas, getting a young asset like Jalen Green, get him back in the state of Texas, could be a nice piece around Cooper Flag going forward. You get Grayson Allen, who's usually available and a good three-point shooter, a little bit of second-round draft capital. And the Suns now have Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, Dylan Brooks, Colin Gillespie. Like, you know what? Anthony Davis and Devin Booker intrigues me a little bit if AD can stay healthy. For the San Antonio Spurs, I want to maximize Wemby's window. He's already dealing with injuries early in his career. You may never get a better bang for your buck than what Wemby's production is on his rookie contract. And he's also making a rookie amount for a #1 overall pick next year as well. Be aggressive this year. Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, and 2 first-round picks going to New Orleans for Trey Murphy. Obviously, this team doesn't need another guard since you have Stephon Castle, you have De'Aaron Fox, you have Dylan Harper. So what if we could basically replace Keldon Johnson offensively with Trey Murphy, not having to trade away Devin Vassell or Carter Bryant? You had somebody that's averaging around 20 points this year, 6 rebounds, shooting 46 from the field, 37 from 3, and 93% from the free throw line. Imagine the open looks Trey Murphy would get playing off of De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama. He would be unreal. He's 25 years old. He fits the timeline completely, and he's also under a favorable contract, about $25 million this year. Then it goes up by $2 million every single year till 2029 when it's $31 million. You still own a little bit of draft capital after this deal. I don't think San Antonio is going to extend Jeremy Sohan, and maybe they can convince New Orleans to get 2 first rounders, another young power forward, and a solid scoring wing for Trey Murphy, because this would be, I think, an unreal fit in San Antonio. For Memphis here, it's basically just moving on from KCP and a young asset in Gigi Jackson for Malik Monk. Now, KCP has 1 year less on his deal than Malik Monk, and we saw Sacramento trade away Jonas Valanciunas for Dario Saric for that reason in the offseason to save some money. So would Sacramento make this trade, but they also get to take a chance on a young forward with potential in Gigi Jackson, who's basically out of the Grizzlies rotation this year. He had such a promising rookie year as a teenager. Injuries kind of derailed year number 2, and like I said, hasn't really had consistent playing time this year. He could have more opportunities in Sacramento, and Memphis adds Malik Monk for 2 guys that are either bad or not in their rotation right now. They've had so many guard injuries this year to Monk, Scottie Pippen, and Ty Jerome. They get Malik Monk, who's at least been somewhat reliable over his career. And the last trade, we're going to talk about the Pelicans, hopefully thinking that the Lakers are going to be aggressive at the deadline, trading away Herb Jones to the Lakers for Jared Vanderbilt, Dalton Connect, and 2 first-round picks. Now, this might be a lot for Herb Jones, who's having somewhat of a down year offensively, and now we're further and further removed from his breakout year in 2024, given that he just played 20 games last year, 16 games this year, is already dealing with a calf injury, and has struggled a little bit around the rim. Now, I think his efficiency would go up a ton playing off of Reeves, Luka, and LeBron in LA. You get an elite defender on the perimeter in Herb Jones, who could guard almost 1 through 5 if he's fully healthy. And I think the Pelicans could capitalize on Herb Jones before that contract extension kicks in, where he's making about $14 million this year, $15 million next year, but then it goes up to $20 million in 2028, $22 million in 2029, and $24 million in 2030. You get Vanderbilt, who can at least be just a front court depth guy, dull to connect as a shooter, and 2 first-round picks moving forward. So that is it for me. I just hit you guys with 30 trades. I know you're not going to like all of them, so let me know which ones you like and dislike down below. If you did enjoy any part of this video, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.